that displacement map that we use is always a separate file. It's always a PSD file, and it's always a grayscale image. So what's the best way to get that map? I've done it a number of ways. I've taken the source image, made a grayscale image out of it, saved it, given a name like map or displacement map or something like that. But I also, and actually I kind of find this to be a little easier and a little quicker, is that I'll usually just go into the channels and take a look at my red, green, and blue channels. And I'm looking at this area here, and I want to pick the channel that has the most contrast in it. Because I've got a white shirt, these are all fairly even, but I feel like probably the red channel is the better solution there, I think. Any of them would work, but I think the red one probably works best. Easy way to go about that, select that channel, do a Command A, select all, or go edit, select all, wherever select all went. All right, Command A. I always use key commands anyway. And then copy that red channel, and I make a new document that's grayscale, create it, go back into my layers panel, and I just paste it right in there. And theoretically, that can be my displacement map. The thing we want to watch out for with displacement maps is that really all we want is the bare amount of information that'll give us a feel for the contours. But if I take a look in here, there's a lot of texture in this shirt, and I probably want to try to minimize that. The other thing I want to do is also try to increase the contrast of these highlights and darks. So I'm going to start by, I think the first thing I'm going to do is actually go into my adjustment layers and toss a levels adjustment layer in there and just brighten up my whites just a little bit. I'm just going to pull in that side, and I'm going to pull in my blacks. And then this middle one, I can kind of darken up my midtones a little bit. Decent contrast is really all you're looking for right here. The fact that it's real dark in those shadows doesn't really matter so much, because there are other adjustments we can make in the displacement settings. But I'm just going to kind of try to get nice contrast here, so I've got some decent highlights and shadows, and call it at that. And then I'm also going to go back into my image here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see. And I'm going to toss a Gaussian blur on it. So I'm going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. And just do enough that you kind of eliminate those extra textures, and you get smoother transitions from highlights into shadows. I'm only doing it, with this image, I'm only doing about 6. Setting the radius to about 6.6, somewhere in there. Seems to work out okay. It's fairly smooth. I'll be able to tell when I put in my displacement map if I didn't go low enough, but I can always come back and change it later. So we'll do that. Say okay. And then I'm just going to save this file. Save it as, go to my OneDrive or wherever you're saving your files to. Find my stuff. Let's do this. Create a folder for mock-ups, and this will be my shirt map. And I'm just going to leave it as a PS. So it's a grayscale PSD file. So I've got my displacement map. So now I need to go back here and bring back all my colors. My color in this. And the next thing I need is a graphic of some kind to put on this shirt. So you're welcome to set type if you want to. There's also a file in that folder. The one that I used is this Kickin' Asphalt graphic. If you open that file up, it's just a Illustrator file. And I'm using, the graphic I'm actually using here is the one that's intended for the back of a shirt. I'm using this bigger white one. Just going to copy that, all of it. So the nice thing about Photoshop, and I don't think we've actually ever talked about it at all, you can copy elements out of Illustrator and paste them straight into Photoshop. And whenever you paste them in, you have the options of saving them as pasting it in as a raster image, or as a vector, or as a smart object, or as a vector image. So I'm actually going to paste this in as a raster image though for this purpose because it just works better. So I've got all the elements for my graphic. I'm going to come back over to Photoshop, and then I'm just going to paste them, and I'm going to paste them as pixels. And it remains a vector image until I actually hit return. So I can still scale that up from whatever size it was whenever it went in. Once I get it big enough, that's probably plenty big enough. Much too big actually, but that's all right. And hit return and accept that. So we've got our graphic in there. So the next steps I'm going to take are, I think this always works better when I'm working with a smart object. So I'm going to actually take this graphic and on this layer, and I'm going to turn it into I want to convert it to a smart object. And name this and then I'm just going to kind of scale it down and position it on my t-shirt after I've done that. The smart object part isn't 100% necessary. However, some of the things I'm going to have available, some of the options available to me are going to be, if you don't do that part, you'll have different options or fewer options available to you. And whenever I try to edit my initial setup. So I'm just going to sort of set this in here about the size I want it. And if we right click, while we're still in transform mode, I'm just going to use the distort option to kind of make it match the perspective of the shirt that he's wearing. Or match the perspective of the photo. And it's, perspective might have actually worked a little bit better, maybe, but just kind of adjust it until it looks decent. Looks like it's in perspective to what he's doing. All we got to do is really be close. Image graphics, motion graphics as well, I always say are really kind of, it's sort of sleight of hand for the most part. You want to be really close, but you don't have to be perfect. Because whenever we apply that displacement to it, it's going to kind of mask any of those other imperfections just because of the nature of the subject. So I've kind of scaled that down, got it positioned where I want it, hit return, and that'll accept all of those settings. So now that is as it is. So we all got that part before I move on. All right. So the displacement part is the fun part. So let's go up here to filter. Oh, make sure we have our text graphic layer selected. Let's go up here to filter, down to distort, and we're going to pick displace. And we're going to use the default values to start with. So I think the default values are really probably kind of low, but that's okay. So we're going to start with the default values, and you know, I leave all these checkboxes alone, and it always works out well for me. So we'll do that and say okay, and then it's going to want me to go find my displacement map that I created, that I saved. And it's probably going to remember where you saved it as well. So since it was the last file we worked with. So you just go select that displacement map, select open. And when you do, you should get something that looks a little bit like that. And if you look at it, it kind of seems to follow those contours for the most part. It's not, it at least gives movement to that graphic that seems to make sense with the highlights and the shadows in the shirt. And especially if we go and we take and we try some different blend modes with that layer. So if we try overlay, it's too late. Darker color, multiply. Multiply actually kind of works okay. The only thing you don't get is highlights on the, you don't get highlights on the graphics. So sometimes it's working with a few different things too. Just kind of look through those different options. I don't like what darken does to the bright blue. That's actually not bad. Color burn doesn't look terrible. Color burn at least picks a little bit of highlight brings at least a little bit of highlight in where these highlights are, helps with that believability. It might be a little bit bright, so maybe I decide I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try duplicating this t-shirt graphic, and let's try I'm going to place a multiply on top of that, but I'm going to knock its opacity way back. There we go. That darkens up a little bit. I kind of like how that works. So that seemed to work out kind of well. So here's the reason I made this a smart object real quick. So I'm going to turn off this. I'm just going to keep my original t-shirt graphic here. So the reason I made this a smart object is that here's that displacement smart filter. So I can turn that off anytime just to sort of compare. But even more, over here to the right is this little preferences icon. If I right click on that, I can edit that smart filter and it'll reopen my dialog box. And I'm going to change these 10s to 30. And it'll ask me to reselect my shirt map. So if you decide you need to modify your map, you can do that. This is the process you use to re-import it. Do that, open it. And 30 is just a little bit too much. It actually gives it a very psychedelic kind of look, which goes with the graphic, but you know. So I think 10 worked out pretty well. 30 is too much. I might try 20 just to see. I mean, you know, the thing is you always look at it, could it be a little bit better? And if the answer is yes, then you try something else. I mean, it's just kind of the process. The change I made going from 10 to 30, the similar adjustment could be made by going back into your map, and darkening the shadows, and then re-importing that. You could make a similar kind of a thing, change. But maybe the contours, the movement just isn't getting it all. Maybe you over-blurred the image. You might want to, blur the image a little bit less. I mean, if the contours really aren't matching at all, like they just look way too broad, it's probably because you've blurred your original displacement map too much. So that's why I always just kind of zoom in there. I look at the noise, the detail in it, and just blur it until that micro detail is gone. But I keep the highlight detail. So, once I do that, I can kind of fine-tune things. So I could take I think the other thing that maybe needs, what happens a lot of times is, and actually this one's not suffering from it, and I think it's because of the blending modes that I used. You know what, I'm going to actually do a different blending mode. I'm going to do a different blending method here real quick. I'm going to switch all this back to normal on my original one. I turned off the second one that I made. If you right click about above midway is an option called blending options. And it gives you some sort of super control over the blends. So you still get your blending modes, but if I want to bring through some of the detail from that underlayer, you see that there's a current layer and there's an underlying layer. And if you slide those, move those sliders, you start bringing through, although it's not really doing it the way we want it, you can start bringing through some of the detail in that underlying image. But the trick to it is if it's going to work right. If you hold down the Option key and click, like on the highlights, I'm going to hold down the Option key and click on that. That'll separate that pointer. See how I separated that? And then if I slide this over, see there's those highlights I was complaining about not getting earlier. See how those are popping through a little bit? And actually, those are better than the blending modes I just applied. I mean, the blending modes look good, but that seems an awful lot better because look at that, we picked up that texture from the t-shirt, which, makes a big difference. You can do the same thing with the shadow side. I don't know if, I don't know what it's going to give us, but we're going to give it a shot. That doesn't really do a whole lot for us. You will if you hold down the Option key and you split that pointer, you slide it across, but then if you slide back across over to the original position, it'll reform those. So I'm just going to show the highlight there. Pull that up. If I zoom back. That actually looks pretty nice. And you can still mess around with your blending modes then. Actually, at that point, multiply works pretty well because I'm still getting the texture for that t-shirt coming through it. I could probably enhance that a little bit, exaggerate it. But that's a pretty convincing looking application. So aside from the displacement map here, we also looked at this layer panel just a little bit deeper than we have so far. Brought up those layer options. You know, you can apply bevels and glows and all sorts of stuff through here too. I don't know what kind of effect that'll have on it, but you know. So what I could say is that what if we wanted to make all the processes we just used here, and I also brought in this bevel and emboss. I would say that if we had like a stitch monogram or something that, you know, kind of is raised, we could add a bit of an emboss in here. Kind of tweak the fit a little bit. But that kind of gives a little bit extra depth to it. If it was going to be like a, you know, I'm sure you've seen, I mean, the shirts where the ink is actually rather puffy, you know, you can get that same kind of effect that way. It's not really what I'm going for here, so I'm going to turn that off. This actually works out well. I needed mock-ups of all this stuff for my books, so my portfolio, so. But, you know, so there we use a displacement map to do that graphic. Like I said, I mean, consider reflections in water. You know, reflections will follow the ripple pattern. It's a perfect, and the steps would be precisely the same. You would probably adjust these blending options a little more. You know, if you had water, for instance, I think that if we pulled this white over, you know, we could knock out the highlights, so we only got the image in the shadow areas. But all these settings are worth kind of playing around with and seeing what you can do. So we'll just accept that. And then, you know, the original graphic I created, I did some other stuff with as well. So just to kind of revisit a little bit what we've done thus far. So if I go back into this image, I'm gonna, actually I don't need this layer at all anymore. Get rid of layers I don't need. So this displace map, remember that this is a layer mask for that displace map. So if I only want the displacement to show up in a certain spot, I could use this layer mask to mask out. So I don't know why. If I didn't want that displacement map to affect this area, I grab my paintbrush, click on that displacement map. You see, and it removes the displacement. So I kind of but maybe where that might be desirable is maybe you've got an area that, what you'll go get sometimes is areas that just don't look quite right, and you may want to minimize that. So you can always go back and tweak those areas up in a number of ways, but so that's, you know, kind of what we get there. So also with this, there's this little arrow next to it out here on the layer. If I click on that little arrow, that'll close that up so that I minimize my layer. So why don't we add, I actually removed from this image, I removed all the red from the background. I kind of gave it a little more of a black and whitish. It's not even really a black and white look because I brought some color back into it, but if I do that, I'm just going to go down here and select my, I did that with hue, saturation, brightness, HSB, and click on that little hand. I'll select like this red area right here. So that's the area that's going to be affected. And I'm just going to pull some of the red out of it. And darken it up a little. Pull a lot of the red out of it actually. Drop the saturation quite a bit. So the effect that had, it did what I wanted it to do. I wanted to lose some of that red. Reason being for this particular thing, the red doesn't really match my client very well. A blue would. I mean, I could change, I guess I could have, never really thought about it, but I guess I could pull a blue back in there, change that background color a little bit. It definitely affects him, which I'll need to fix. It kind of depends on what look we're going for, to be honest with you. Actually, I kind of like the blue. It's kind of neat. But if I go back here, I'm just going to, I'll stick with what I had. So I'm just going to dial the saturation way down. And then I might want to bring a little bit of the color back into this guy. I could do that a couple of ways. Through my mask, I could kind of go back in and, you know, sort of paint and bring some of his color back. It doesn't affect the white at all, so I can ignore that, but it does affect his arms and his skin tones quite a bit. I'm just going to kind of, it's a little different the way I did it before. The way I did it before was I isolated the guy and created another layer of him and masked out the background entirely, but this works just as well. And actually, I probably would wish I went ahead and duplicated the background and masked the guy out, because I also want to put the graphic against the wall. And I need him outlined. So I'm just going to delete my layer mask. Or, nah, I'll leave it alone. But I'm definitely going to duplicate him. Grab my object selection tool, do a quick mask of him because it doesn't have to be perfect. Shift that edge in a little bit. Feather it a little. Okay. Make a mask. And then I'm going to go back and bring my graphic of that t-shirt back in. Paste it as a smart object this time so I can scale it up as I want. Actually, that's not the one I wanted. I take that back. Boom. I wanted this one. There we go. Paste this one in. Still got all my blending options available. I don't know what there is really to pull in, but we'll take a look anyway. Oh yeah. Got a little bit of texture in there. Kind of layer some stuff up. And then I'm also going to use my mask of that guy. I'm going to toss another shadow against the wall. Best thing to use to do like a shadow in this case would be the mask that I generated to outline the guy. So if I command click on that, that'll select him. I can create another layer. Let's see. Needs to be below him. Fill that with black. Yeah, you can always do black. You can try even a different color if you wanted to try something a little richer. If I want to try, let's say I want to try something a little darker, but it has some blue in it. We always perceive shadows as being black, which is generally true and generally fine, but a lot of times you can really kind of toss some richness into your shadows by picking a different color. Something really dark with a cast of another color in it, dependent upon the image that you're working on, you know? So I'm just going to do that. Say okay. Then I'm just going to bring it on top and sort of slide it. Oops. Photoshop got very weird about, let's see. I'm going to lock a couple of layers here. So I can get in here and drag this to shadow. Drop it back below him. Maybe I should probably scale it a bit. Something like that. And then I'm just going to toss a Gaussian blur on it. If you want to be able to control, so here's another case where, you know, I could just apply the Gaussian blur to this. I'll get it close to where I want it and leave it and it'll be fine. But remember, if you want to have the ability to edit that blur later on, like you just want to get close, but you might want to go back in and change it for some reason, you can always make this shadow layer a smart object. Convert to smart object, and then apply that blur. It's going to use Gaussian blur, but there's a whole bunch of different options here you can try. Crank that blur way up. Kind of depends on the look you're going for. Say okay. I always multiply shadows in to really kind of darken them. And then slide that down. Shadows generally, unless you've got something actually touching a surface, they'll get almost black there, almost pure black. But generally speaking, shadows aren't solid black through and through. You generally want to be able to see detail through them. And I think that's shadows too. Do something like that. But that kind of takes and blends that whole thing. Did everybody do that while I was doing it? You didn't? Okay, I can go back and I'll go back and redo it. So, yeah. How did I add shadow? I just used my layer. I used the mask that I created for that background image. Who else didn't do it with me while I was doing it? I'll go back actually and do it from the beginning. So, but actually, I should have skipped this back part. I should have just stuck to the displacement map and then. But I got carried away. It happens. I'm always looking for ways to kind of kick stuff up just an extra notch, you know? That extra little bit of believability. So I'm going to do this again from the start, real quick. I'm going to save as. This is my all right. So we got that. So let's do the whole displacement part. Let's see. Yeah. So let's bring that guy into Photoshop. And we'll just go ahead and bring all of our elements in while we're at it here. Make it nice and easy. So open that Photoshop file if you don't have it, and grab the blue and the white version of the graphic. I'm going to copy that. Go back to Photoshop, and we're going to paste that in here as, I'm going to paste it as a smart object. Actually, I only need it once, so I'm going to paste it as pixels and just size it up a little bigger than what I needed. Accept that. And then I'm going to hide that here real quick. All right. So the first thing we need to do is make our map. So I'm going to go back into, in this image, I'm going to go into channels. So keep in mind that the reason I turned off this layer is because if I leave that on and I go into my channels, that graphic is going to be part of that channel. So if I go back here, turn that off, it leaves me my original pure channels. So, man, these are all like pretty much exactly the same. All right, I'm just going to grab my green channel. Just do Command A on your keyboard to select everything and copy it. Command C. And then create a new document. And just use the defaults, because whatever's on your clipboard, Photoshop will set those dimensions for the file, which is kind of nice. So say OK, create. Make sure whenever you paste that in, though, you go back into the layers to do it. Otherwise, you end up pasting it into a channel and it gets a little funky. Things don't work quite right. So paste it into that. That's not what I wanted at all. Hold on. There we go. I need to select the right layer. Then grab. All right. All, copy it. Back over here. Paste it. New document. There we go. Create, paste. All right. That's what I wanted. All right. So remember, we want to kind of get rid of some of this detail. Actually, we're not going to get rid of any of this detail. We're going to leave this exactly as it is. Save this file. And this is map2.psd or whatever you want to call it. Just remember what you called it. Say save. I'm going to do this without minimizing any of this detail, just so we can kind of see what happens. Watch it not make a noticeable difference in this case. All right, so we got that. Pop back over here. Make sure we turn our RGB channels back on. Go to our layers. Turn our kick and asphalt on. And the first thing we want to do is make this a smart object. So either through this little menu, convert to smart object, or right click and convert to smart object. And then we're just going to right click on that. Whoops. Actually select that. Command T on the keyboard. Command and T for transform. What did I do? There's always some little thing. All right, there we go. Command T. I'm just going to distort. Actually, I want to scale first. And then I'm just going to distort this, get it positioned. I really want the middle of that to kind of be right on the center line of his shirt. There we go. Fairly good. Then hit return. And now we'll go ahead and do the displacement part. So with this layer selected, this is my graphic. I'm going to go up here to my filter menu, down to distort, displace, and we will leave everything at 10 are the defaults, I think. So we'll leave them at 10. Say OK. And then select your displacement map. So here's my map 2. Open that. Yeah. So here's why we kind of remove that, some of that detail. And I am blown up 300%, but if we zoom in on that, see how rough it kind of makes. And it's kind of adding a bit of a wave to that graphic all the way through. So that's kind of why part of the reason that we blur that initial image a little bit, get rid of all that micro detail, because it does pick it up. So I'll just go back into my map 2. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, or any blur you want to use, really. I just like Gaussian blur because I can kind of control it. I think before I was up around 6. I'm going to do a little more than I did before. I'm going to do like 8. See if there's a difference. Do that. And I'm also going to go ahead and adjust the levels. I'm going to darken the shadow areas a little bit. So I'm just going to grab my levels. Sort of darken those just a little. See what I get. Maybe it's too much. Let's try that. All right. There we go. Save that file. Once you've saved it, we'll just go back into this graphic under Smart Filters where it says Displace right here. Just right-click on this little icon out here to the side. And you want to edit the Smart Filter. I'll leave it at 10, say OK, and reselect. Why did I lose I lost my displacement map for some reason. Option. Yeah. This is no different than what I had before. All right, let's try that again. I'm not sure why that did that. There we go, map 2. Sometimes Photoshop gets persnickety. There we go. So that, smooth that out. I think I'm gonna bump that contour just a little bit. I'm gonna edit that Smart Filter again. I'm gonna change the 10s to 15. See what I get. Okay, map 2. Actually, I think I like that a little better. Although it does kind of get, you really got to kind of inspect it because it does get kind of weird right here. You know, here, this is kind of, right here we don't see a big difference. Like this follows the contour, but this is really a pretty hard, I mean, really it should disappear around that edge, you know, and come back out. We could probably fine-tune some stuff like that, but I kind of think, I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm not going to, I think the 10 I had this at probably should have been where I stayed. Maybe 12, maybe somewhere split the difference. If I do that real quick, maybe I'll drop this to 12. Okay, map 2. There we go. So now let's sort of blend this with a t-shirt. So if we right click on this graphic layer, we want to select blending options. And I'm just kind of zooming in so I can see what's going on. So come down here to underlying layer. And if you hold down your option key and click on the highlight side, that'll split it. And now I can pull this over and just sort of watch that texture and the highlight kind of start to come through. You can go too far and then just kind of bring it back. But the reason that extra little step is so nice is, remember before I was complaining about the multiply. Multiply fills in shadows, really nice, but it doesn't help you out at all for your highlights. Do that. Now I can go up here to the blend mode and I can apply multiply. And it picks up my shadows, but it gives me those highlights. And I can go back down here again and kind of maybe bump those highlights a little bit. Try the shadow as well. See what it gives you. Maybe, yeah, shadow doesn't give a whole lot. But I don't know. I just kind of play around with these sliders a little bit, see what see what trying different things gets me. I think okay. And you should have a fairly nice looking displacement out of that. Then anything else you want to do, anything else we do to it from here is just kind of extra, We got our guy with the shirt applied to it. So why don't we go ahead and real quick just, I want to duplicate the background. So if I select that background, go here into the menu and duplicate that layer. And then I'm just going to select my object selection tool. Drag it around all of him. And now I'm just kind of doing some of the things we talked about whenever we talked about selections. I did that. I'm going to use select and mask because if I come in here, I want to make sure that, actually, that looks pretty nice. I'm going to shift the edge. So shift edge, remember on this select and mask tool, shift edge will actually, to the negative side, it'll choke that mask into the selection. You go to the positive side, it'll expand it a little bit. So I'm going to go to the negative side and choke the mask in, just to make sure I don't end up with, any of my background showing through. And then I'm going to kind of, actually, I want to catch these highlights here. There we go. All right. And then feather it just a little bit. I always give it a little bit of a feather, half a pixel, maybe a hair bit more. It's just that, especially after I've choked it, it's like nothing is really ever truly crisp and clean. But I think that'll do the trick. Just say okay. And then we'll just, in this layer, we'll just make a selection. And the reason I did that was, remember, I kind of want, I'm going to put that graphic behind him, plus I want to put a shadow in there. So if I go back to my, and I'm also going to adjust my, actually, let's do that. So let's go ahead and make our color adjustment. I'm going to do this one different. I'm going to go ahead and go down here to my adjustment layers, and I'm still going to use hue and saturation. But this time, I'm going to take this more to a blue color. Oh, there we go. Blue. Just gonna lighten it some. Actually, that's dark. There we go. That looks kind of nice. If you turn that layer on and off, you see the change we made. And then after that, I'm just going to go back into my Illustrator file, grab the blue and the white version of that graphic, copy it, and right above this hue and saturation layer, I'm just going to paste that in there as a smart object. I kind of like keeping things compact. Let's do that. Kick an asphalt. Sort of position it like that. And I could just adjust my opacity maybe to sort of take a little bit of the bright white out of it. But I think instead, I'm still going to use those. I'd still like those layer blending options, those blending options for the layer. So I'll just select that. I think that this time actually though, I think it's the shadow side that produces the good results. That kind of starts bringing that underlying layer into this a little bit. Maybe the white, we'll try it. Yeah, didn't have much effect. But it did bring a little bit of texture into that. Say okay. I also think that it's really very crisp. It should probably be a little softer. So since it's a smart object, I can just apply that Gaussian blur to it. That's too much. Just a little bit, not much. There we go. Say okay. You can kind of make whatever adjustments you want to him, but I think that kind of does it. I do kind of like the effect you get. Like I'm gonna take him, I'm gonna drop his opacity some so that that blue starts creeping in a little bit. Just a little. A lot of times creating composite images, you know, making changes and adjustments, I mean, I don't know. Most people stop at the action they want to take, the thing they want to do. But usually, I mean, it's kind of like anything. You know, that was it. Any action has needs an equal but opposite reaction, something like that. Either that or I'm like rephrasing it for my purposes. I'm not sure. But, you know, when you make a change to something like the background color, usually I think it's always nice to consider anyway, trying to, you know, kind of pull that color into the photo, the image overall in some way. We don't want it to be that, I don't really think we want it to be that stark, but try to keep a little bit of his natural color, but bring just a little bit of that blue in there. Kind of just, I think just kind of solidifies everything. By doing that, I do get a little bit of show through in the arm, so I probably would actually, if I do that, I probably really need to, oh, actually, I can do this. So I'm getting a little bit of show through in the arm there. What I could do is put a mask on my vector layer. Oops. Select that and just kind of, yeah, where I'm getting that show through, I can just kind of mask that area out a little bit, just so that there. It's a nice looking image. So that's our first one. Anybody need to see anything again, or are you good? I didn't put the shadow in this one. You know, like I said before, what I did, the way I did that though, I mean, it's pretty simple. I just used this mask, hold down the command key and click on it, makes a selection out of it, and then make another layer, fill it with black or some dark color. Actually, in this case, that blur is going to work. That blue is going to work out real well, I think. That dark blue. Okay. And it's kind of back behind him. A lot of times I'll just use my arrow keys to kind of move that into position. So if I press my arrow keys while that layer is selected, see, I can just slide it over out from behind him. Do that, pull it back a little closer to the wall. Scale that shadow up a little bit. Shadows tend to be a little bigger. Do that. And then we'll just take and blur. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to apply my multiply first. Multiply it. Now I'll apply my blur. Gaussian blur. Like I said, I almost always use Gaussian blur for stuff, but feel free to try out some of these other blurs. You can get some interesting effects out of them. Gaussian always ends up being my, you know, the go-to. Do that. Blur it. Drop its opacity a little bit, because it doesn't need to be that heavy. I always find that's probably the biggest thing about most shadows that I see people do is they make them too heavy and too black. Sometimes you need that, but you know, most shadows are fairly subtle unless you're going for something truly, really graphic and high contrast. But so there we go, and that's that. Save that. T-shirt mock-up blue. So the nice thing is, I've got like 12 different T-shirt graphics that I need mock-ups of. I've set all the, I've created my map and everything else. Now it's just a matter of kind of going through and turning this one off and putting another one in, going through the same steps again. I've done all the other work, So, all right. Anybody need to see something else before I move on? Yeah. The shadow. So the shadow is just, I've got this mask right here for him. I just held down the command key and clicked on that mask, and that selects it. And then I created another layer. I just created a layer right below, filled it with black or, a dark. In this case, I did dark blue. And blurred it. I did, because it's right behind him, it's difficult to grab. The way I moved it out from behind him was, with the layer selected, I just used my left and right arrow keys, or my right arrow key and my down key. Just keep bumping that and you'll see it move across. You just let it move across until it's, where you want it. Move it down a little bit or whatever. So, yeah. The background. I did a hue saturation adjustment mode. Adjustment layer. And you just make the appropriate adjustments to the sliders. You kind of slide them around until you get what you want. All right. All right. I'm gonna move on. We got like an hour to cover the last one, so we're gonna go through it kind of quick, but we'll get it. So the last one that I had was this. So I got this woman leaning up against the wall, and I've got the graphic on the back wall. Multiple ways to do this. Simpler ways to do it, probably than the one I'm going to show you. But I feel like the one I'm going to show you is the most flexible, especially if you have multiple elements that you want to put on that wall. So we're going to open up I think it's this image. So grab the image of the woman leaning against the wall. And I think the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually define the perspective of this shape. So it's another filter that we're going to use. We're going to use the vanishing point filter to do this one. Now, we could do the same kind of thing with the transform tools and distort. We could probably use the perspective mesh tool would work as well, probably. But I like the effect that this gives. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer, and you can leave it named whatever you want. And then I'm just going to use this. I'm going to go filter vanishing point. And so I've got an entire wall here that I want to make sure I map, but I don't have access to like what happens up outside of the frame. So what's kind of nice about this tool is that it gives us this little, there's a bunch of different options here, by the way. We're just going to focus on just a couple top ones. But it gives you this little point tool. And we're just going to kind of, we could do this real rough first, but I'm just going to kind of zoom in here. I'm going to define the first corner, the back corner, come up here, and I'm going to go up, and I'm only going to go up to this point, to this line. See that one line running right through the wall there, up about this point? I just want to kind of do that. Set that there. And it puts a yellow grid in there. I can still move these points around. So if the grid that it gives you is yellow, Photoshop doesn't really like that, and it doesn't agree with our selection. So you see how I got this yellow up here? So I'm just going to grab one of these points and move it down just a little, and it turns blue. Seems to like that a little bit better. And I'm just going to kind of zoom in and make sure that I have hit all my corners. Like I kind of missed this one. So I'll come down here and put it in place. Let's see, this one I think probably needs to drop a little bit. Pull it right inside. And I just want to make sure it's right on, kind of right on the mark. You know, it's like anything, you know, you get everything as close as you can possibly get it to start with, because if you don't, as you get further down the road, it usually comes out, you know? So I'm just going to pull this over to here. I think maybe I can get rid of that yellow too. Yeah, if I pull down this end. There we go. Whatever I do, I want my grid to be blue. All right, there, it seems to like that. So we've defined the grid, but I don't have the entire wall. So anything I do is only going to happen inside of this area. So here's what's kind of nice. We've defined the perspective. So if I grab this middle handlebar, and I'm just going to zoom back here so I can see everything. If I grab this middle handlebar, I can just pull this up, and it matches the perspective all the way up out of there. So I'll just pull it down. I really don't need more than I need. So we'll just pull that up. So you don't always have to map the entire area. I mean, it's easy to map the entire area if you've got like a billboard, which has very defined corners. But a lot of times you'll have shapes like this where you don't have access to all of the actual, you know, that information you need. So you do a part of it, you do what you do know, and then you can kind of stretch that up and elongate it. So we've defined our grid. So I'm just going to say okay and accept that. It went away. It doesn't really look like it did anything, but it did. So next, we're going to go back, and I'm just going to so we can do this graphic again if we want to. The graphic we've been working with. I think I also put in that folder. What's this look like? No, that's not it. This would be a fun one to work with this. Let's see. Oh. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've got this image. So it's this Anna Ronke image. So I'm just going to open Photoshop, or open this in Photoshop. And I'm going to turn it. Just rotate it. I'm going to make it the same orientation of my wall. I don't really have to, I mean, but I'm going to. So let's see, image rotation, 90 degrees. Let's go clockwise. All right. We got this image. I was actually looking for a graffiti image and I couldn't find one, so this is the next best thing. Select that image, copy it, let's go back over here, and select this layer, and I want to go up here to, but go back up to filter and vanishing point. And there's our grid again. And I'm just going to zoom back so I can see everything. But I'm going to paste that image right in here. And then make sure that selection is, by default it should be, this should be selected. Then click on that image and drag it into that grid. And you see that it conforms it to that perspective. See how it changed it? And if you need to scale it up, go down here and grab this transform tool that's on the side and just scale it up. So here's one of my, I'm just going to point this out. This is one of my peeves about Photoshop and Adobe. So every app requires that you hold down the shift key to constrain a scale, except for Photoshop's default transform. But what do you think we have to do here inside of this perspective tool? Hold down the damn shift key. I don't know. So did you reopen, so you reopened Vanishing Point, right? You got the Vanishing Point window open? Did you, and you pasted it in? So is the image in there now at all? Okay. Did you have that layer selected that we made? All right. Give me half a second here. Let's say, so once you get that size and in position, say okay. And it'll be in there. All right. So let's see what you got. so the, like you could, so you copy that. So go back over to your wall. This is, so select that layer. I don't know, but both of you are on PCs, so I really wonder if it's a PC. His isn't working either. Anybody else on PC? Are you? Did it work for you? It has to be a PC. Well, unfortunately. Okay, so I'll show you all the way to do it. That ain't gonna work for you. All right. So the other way you can do that is I'm just going to turn that one off. All right. So the other way you can do that is to, probably the easiest one actually, alternate way of doing it, is to just go ahead and forget about the perspective pen tool, but paste that image in here. And we're just going to, I'm going to kind of set it so that it's sitting right here at this back corner. And then if you right click or place it, and if you do Command T for transform, you should have, you should be able, you can scale it, but I think perspective will probably do about the same thing for you. It just requires a little more finagling. So, but we're going to give that a shot. So try perspective as a transform, and when you pull the right or the left bottom corner, you'll see that the entire thing kind of stretches out. See how that does that? You can also, with the perspective tool, grab the middle and slide, sort of skew it down, but it keeps it in check. And then if you right click on it again, you can select distort or a different transform option. I think I'll do distort as my second one. And then just kind of, this is a very forgiving image, so it can kind of be whatever it needs to be. If you had an image that had like a pattern in it that needed to match up with lines, by doing it this, if you use this method, making it a little bit opaque so you can see through it is usually helpful. This image isn't a problem because it's all abstract, but try doing it that way though. And this is a perfectly fine way of doing it. The only the major difference between the two methods is that If I've got multiple images that I actually want to put into this wall, I'd have to do the transform on all of them. Although I guess I could, yeah, I'd have to do the transform on all of them. Whereas with the perspective distort, or the perspective filter, I've created that. So now I just add additional layers, and it uses that same perspective. I just drag them into place, and it puts them in. But this is another way you can do it. So I'm just gonna select that, layer blending options. It's kind of crazy that I can bring, with those layer blending options, I can start to bring her through that image. Although I don't really like that method, but it is interesting. Actually, I'm going to drag these all back over. I don't want to do that yet. Say OK. I'm just going to make a quickie selection of her. Duplicate the layer. Select the mask. Clean this up a little. So if you guys have been working on your concepts for your next assignment, how you want to handle that? Why don't you, so finish working with this, try to, blend that texture into that wall and sort of create that, mask her out, lay that on there. There's other images in that folder, try those as well with different things, just to kind of get the hang of these tools. But I would kind of like to see what everybody's working on with that assignment. So with the time that we have left, why don't we, why don't you bring them up just one at a time, and we'll take a look at them and see where you're headed, and because you're going to want to start shooting your photo. I mean, if you know what you want to do, it's supposed to be a decent weekend, I think. So it might be a good time to, start thinking about taking your photos and that kind of stuff, your exterior ones. Yeah. Oh, okay. Then you can show me your options, and we'll go from there. All right. So who wants to go first? You want to go? Let's see it, Sandra. All right. It's in there somewhere, ain't it? There you go.
I wanted to try the
Okay. Okay. So remember, this is one continuous image through the background. So, okay. It looks like you had the same, or different views of the same.
just different perspectives.
Yeah, it looks like different perspectives of the same. It should be one long panoramic image. So because remember, type and that kind of stuff has to be part of it. So what's your theme or your,
I wanted to use maybe a theater.
right?
Yeah,
Right. But is it, like the examples that we looked at had type, in each of them. Is it,
something like
theater sound at an affordable price, or is it,
just the music,
okay,
something like that.
okay, all right. Yeah, give some thought to that, that concept, that overall concept. But yeah. Is the idea here is just like a home or
It's a
okay, all right, okay, all right. Yeah, give some thought to what that overarching concept is. What your type would be. Kind of indicate that. How you work that in. Remember, type is an image, so we're not just plunking type, on images. So, but yeah, it's a good start. I think the theater thing would be kind of cool if you could find a nice big, broad, wide theater. You could kind of hang them over the corner. I don't know, do a number of things with them. So, yeah, okay, cool. Yep, that'd be neat. If you can come up with something, work out something with that, I think that'd just make sure that's one long panoramic image. So, and that's one of those things, places where, get back far from us, you see a lot. So, and if you can, you could even shoot, I don't know if your phone does like a panorama mode, but you could try that, or just a long image. It's over 3,000 pixels wide, which should be fine for most cameras. You just got to frame it up right. So.
So can you try different perspectives, angles?
You can try different perspectives, but the three images have to be part of all from one image. So, if you shoot the front of a theater, it needs to be, a long, thin crop. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. All right. Cool. Yeah. Keep cranking. If you, think what that theme is or what the message is for it, so, all right? Let's see. Next, whoever wants to go next? Jelona? Okay.
As you know, I was using contact lenses.
Uh-huh.
I came up with a couple taglines or like little sayings.
Mm-hmm.
So this one was no fishy business, and I was thinking about like an aquarium and having the bottle as like the different pieces within the aquarium.
Okay.
And then this one I kind of wanted to go with like like a photography studio, like the family type
Okay.
vibe. So this one, I wasn't really sure if I could incorporate multiple different angles. So as you see, there's not as many as like
Right.
variety in that one.
So the idea is it's one long image.
Yes.
So, because as you flip through it via Instagram or whatever else, it's the same background image, but it's just a new section of it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And then the last one I was thinking about a couch. So I really couldn't really like draw it as
Okay.
detailed as I wanted it, but I wanted to have like the couch setting and like the different modeling within there.
Okay.
So yeah, those are my
Got it.
ideas.
Okay. Cushioning your lenses so you can look with comfort. Could be interesting. I like the aquarium idea too. Is there one you prefer?
Not really. Just experimenting kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, so remember your headline will be part of the graphic, so, and you need to integrate it in. So it's like, again, headline is image. So, and keep in mind too where the breaks are in those three images. So, I like your concept for all three of them. I think that any of them can work pretty well. This I see, so within the spirit of the assignment, the idea is to make things look, be at a scale that they normally aren't. So this feels to me like that would come off really pretty well. I think this one you could, but it almost feels to scale right now. So I think within the spirit of the assignment, I think that this kind of thing probably works the best. But I like the aquarium concept. If you can shoot that, and if you can figure out how to make, how to do I'm sure there's ways to do it. So, it's up to you which one you want to do. That's, I think, of what you got right now, I think that works more in the spirit of the assignment, though. This one I think works. It's just, again, execution is really kind of what it all comes down to. So, I'm good with any of them. So, I would just pick one and move forward with it. You can, like I said, so you can spend your time getting your photos taken and that kind of stuff. So, when you do take photos, just take a bunch. Try it as a panoramic shot. Try it as and see what you get. So. Also some things we talked about the other day, bracketing exposures and that kind of stuff, just to make sure that you got, set up especially if you do an aquarium, you'll want to set up a tripod to make sure that everything works out okay. Fish might be a little challenging, but that could be part of the fun of it too.
Yeah.
So, cool. Yep, I would just, make a choice and move forward.
Start going? Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Next. Alrighty.
I only really have one concept. 'Cause
Okay.
I was trying to think of like ways how I could do the bowling pin outside, and I wasn't really.
Okay.
I couldn't really think of anything, but like I kind of got like a crude layout,
Okay.
and then I was kind of having like bowling pins right here, leaning against. There's like a giant pillow I want to
Right.
play with a lot,
Okay.
and then some like stuff for the words I would want to
Okay.
go on there. That's kind of like that.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, so remember, within the, within the spirit of the assignment, it's, make sure that bowling pin is out of scale, pretty much in all three.
Yeah.
And, yeah, give some, the bowling alley makes sense.
Yeah, 'cause like I said, I tried to think about places I could do it outside, and it's like, why would a bowling pin be outside?
Well, yeah, I think it kind of comes down to how to the approach you take with marketing it,
Yeah.
quote unquote. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be outside. It could be, there's any number of inside, interior settings you could probably try as well.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that anymore. I was just kind
Yeah.
of bowling pin, bowling alley. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can definitely look for other stuff too.
So, yeah, just give it some thought. If that's where you end up, that's fine. And it, with your headlines you've got, it seems like it would all line up and make sense.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, give it, just sort of push it a little bit,
Okay.
even if you have an idea that just seems too off the wall, still scribble it out
Mhm.
and look at it and revisit it later
Okay.
and maybe it's not as crazy as you thought it was initially, or maybe you have a different take on it
Okay.
that does make it work,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
All right, if you have nothing else, that works well, but
Okay.
yeah,
I'll
try some other
definitely
options.
get stuff too, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
cool. Who wants to go next? Yep.
So you like the three first ones at first? I put them in different spots. I don't know where I but I think of like morning time.
Okay.
And like, I don't know, people drink coffee in the morning.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna have like probably like a park or something.
Yeah.
In the morning. Or I was thinking of city, cause
Yeah.
like the buildings and stuff. 'Cause
Mhm.
people want to be in the city, or
Right.
like an actual coffee place.
Right.
Kind of like a park.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of neat, and I kind of like your, I kind of like your thought, start the day with just one cup of, start your day with just one, or maybe it's just, keep it to 1 cup a day, or something like that. Or, what might be kind of funny is, if you want to try it, is to, actually have somebody reaching up onto that, trying to reach over that edge, It'd be something additional to kind of work into one of them anyway. Just to make sure you get that sense of scale, the fact that it's bigger, might be kind of fun if you had, you're able to take a picture of somebody that's holding on to something that you could make it look like they're trying to hold onto the handle, or trying to climb up the side of the mug or something like that. Might be interesting, kind of a fun, quirky take on it, something to think about anyway. I'm good with that idea. I think it works. Yeah, because it places it someplace a little bit out of its element, so, cool. Good deal. All right, next. Anybody? Austin?
Just something in my mind. I was gonna go for like a cityscape type thing, integrating that into
Mhm.
like a cityscape. I have an integrated type, but I do know that I want to, because they are tethered together, I want to play around with the cord that's attached to them, wrapping it
Right.
around stuff and kind of leading it through.
Okay.
And I've also just thought of, I've been thinking about what type I want to use for like,
Right.
the little extra.
Your message?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I had the idea of going to Mod 3, and then I forgot that it's not open right now, so
It-
it'd be
oh.
tough to get in there.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
Okay.
yeah, just something with the cityscape. It's right
Yeah.
just downtown. And
That could be interesting. I think that could be
Yeah.
interesting,
Cool.
for sure. Gives you a chance to kind of shoot it a couple different ways to fit certain spots.
yeah, because
Yeah.
they're a little, like, not super geometric, but they can fit the form of some of the geometric buildings down there, and replacing that
Right.
form then could be kind of fun. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay. So what kinds of thoughts do you have on your message for it?
well, the
In that
theme is
context.
monumental. So I wanted to play around with the fact that there are like two of them.
Okay.
So like double the sound, something that I don't
Mhm.
know. And then obviously since we're playing with scale here, like large
Yeah.
size, small,
Big.
like big, yeah,
Yeah,
something, yeah.
big sound times two,
Yeah.
small, small scale, big sound, something like
Yeah,
that.
but it's definitely something playing on the fact that there are two of them, and
Right.
double or
Yeah.
something.
So if you're putting it in a cityscape, maybe think about something that plays off, off of the sounds of the city, or something like that.
Okay.
Might be interesting.
Yeah.
It would tie to your imagery a little bit, or maybe it's another thought, another direction beyond just small to big, or big sound times two, or whatever. So.
Incorporating the environment into the messaging.
Uh-huh.
Kind of, okay.
Yeah, and I think that would make, I think if you were to do that, that would make nice sense of the entire thing, which is what you're always kind of looking to do. You always want that little, I mean, even headlines that are simple, like that, your image sort of, gives it a little bit of a twist,
Okay.
So just, everything not be quirky or anything, but some sort of little twist is always kind of fun, something unexpected,
Yeah.
So, cool.
Okay.
All right.
Get that. Thank you.
Yep. Next. Next. Yeah, come on up. You bring your stuff with you. All right, what do you got? Okay. 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 So I've got headphones. So, or Sandra's doing headphones. So why don't we look at Cloner, and Austin's, he's got speakers, but he's got a pair of speakers, so it's a little different. Just, were you? Okay. Yeah. Propose a clone. Why not? So, if that's what you do, you need to really kind of, so remember, you gotta have one background image that stretches across 3 panels. So, but before you go shooting stuff, you need to kind of think about what you want that message to be, and what that background, how conceptually, what do you want to do, is it, it's cologne, has the smell, is there some, message with aromas and fragrances, I don't know. I mean, just kind of give some thought to that, what that message will be. So, and that should help also drive what you decide to make that background image be. And it could be something, it could be outside, it could be an inside setting, I mean, whatever you want to do as far as that goes.
Okay.
So, do you have any questions about it?
I was gonna say, I have questions with the background.
Okay.
I know you said you can do it inside and outside,
Mhm.
but do you think like a upsplash image would do anything?
No, you need to take the image yourself. Yeah, everything in here, yeah, you're gonna take your product photography yourself, you're gonna take your background image yourself. Yep. So, you weren't, that's right, you weren't here, so, I will put the deck on Brightspace that I had when we talked about digital photography, and it's just general strategies, approaches, tips, that kind of stuff. So I'll make sure I put that up on Brightspace, which everybody will get a notice whenever I put that up. So take a look at that, because that's what I went over on that's what I did on Tuesday. We did that, and we talked about how to use this light box, because you can shoot your product in here. So read through that, and that should help a little bit, probably. So, but yeah, that's the idea, is to shoot everything yourself. So, all right?
Thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Need a pencil or something to stick along the top of it so it holds it tight? So if that table in there is too low, we can prop that turntable up with books or something like that to get the mug higher if you need it, all right? Yep.
So, whenever I use the object selection tool
Right.
and highlight her, and then click this,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have that whole like red background and
So change view to overlay. There you go.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Hey, do you have any concepts with you for the? Okay. All right. So Tuesday you should have those all figured out, so you got plenty of time to work on the rest of it. All right. Hey, how you doing?
Good. Hey, would you just pull the door closer when you read tonight since we're
Absolutely. Okay, that's great. Okay, will do. Not a problem. Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.